The Los Angeles International Airport was bustling that morning. There was something almost electric in the air, a feeling that mixed tension, anticipation, and a kind of euphoria that only those about to cross the world can experience. Passengers moved in waves, dragging wheeled luggage and taking hurried steps. Among the crowd, a small line formed at the entrance to first class for Flight 317, bound for Tokyo. In the midst of the carefully selected travelers enjoying the luxury of that space, one man stood out in an unusual way. Oliver Bennett. Oliver didn't stand out for being pleasant or charismatic. He wasn't one of those men who light up a room with a simple smile or kind words. In fact, what made him visible was his air of superiority, almost palpable, as if the air around him was thinner. Every gesture seemed rehearsed in front of a mirror. From the way he held his designer blazer folded over his arm to the way he checked his expensive watch, silently conveying to everyone, "I've won at life, and you know it." Oliver was the CEO of a tech startup that had been making headlines for its so-called innovative solutions for the digital market. He loved to be seen as a visionary, someone ahead of his time, willing to change the world with his brilliant ideas. However, the world he projected on social media was carefully constructed. Photos from international conferences, videos of private jet trips, and motivational quotes he rarely followed himself. He was the type of man who lived to be seen and admired, believing that the symbols of success, first class, champagne served before takeoff, the gleam of a brand new laptop pulled from his bag, were the only signs that truly mattered. As he passed the flight attendant, she greeted him with that professional smile-only experience at high altitudes can create, a smile that, in that moment, carried a hint of fatigue. Perhaps it was the way Oliver didn't even acknowledge her existence, or the quick, dismissive glance he threw her way, as if she were merely part of the scenery. He didn't notice, or if he did, he didn't care. For Oliver, the world around him served only as a backdrop for his own narrative. Settling into seat 1A, which he considered the perfect throne for a man of his social stature, Oliver adjusted himself with a satisfied air. He pulled out a top-of-the-line laptop from a leather bag that gleamed more than the lights of the cabin. He connected his expensive headphones and let out a light sigh, not of exhaustion, but of satisfaction, as if savoring a privilege he had earned. His gaze fell on the empty seat 2B. "Perfect," he murmured quietly, almost as if it were a prize. Not having company meant more privacy, and for Oliver, privacy meant efficiency. He saw himself as a misunderstood genius. His time was far too valuable for distractions. Working during the flight, even if it was just to draft emails or jot down vague ideas in a notepad, was an opportunity to show the world, or himself, that he was always one step ahead. It was as if he carried the weight of success on his shoulders, but not without the constant need to remind everyone that he was there, that he had arrived. But what Oliver didn't know, what no one in that cabin could imagine, was that the discreet presence of a passenger in a simple sweatshirt and baseball cap would soon completely change the course of that flight, and perhaps even the way he viewed his own life. First class was, for Oliver, a confirmation that he had won. But that day, on that flight to Tokyo, he would learn a lesson about what it really means to be on top, a lesson he wouldn't soon forget. The world around Oliver Bennett seemed perfect. Champagne served, the tranquility of a reclining seat, the muffled sound of engines beginning to roar to life. Little did he know that just a few inches away, a man with one of the brightest and most impactful minds in the world was about to enter the scene. A man who didn't need an expensive blazer or a rehearsed speech to revolutionize the world. A man named Elon Musk. At that moment, Oliver was still smiling, satisfied with his seat choice and the idea that no one would disturb him. But fate, always unpredictable, had something much greater in store. The temporary tranquility Oliver Bennett savored in his seat 1A, enveloped in the luxury of first class, was abruptly interrupted. He barely noticed the sound of slow, firm footsteps approaching until a figure entered his line of sight. A man dressed in a plain grey sweatshirt, worn-out jeans and a baseball cap that obscured part of his face, appeared. He carried only a small black backpack, so simple it seemed out of place among the polished leather, designer luggage and the subtle shine of watches adorning the wrists of other passengers. The man didn't seem bothered by the environment or even concerned about being noticed. He moved with a calm confidence, as if he had been through that situation countless times before and knew exactly how to conduct himself. He smoothly slid into seat 2B, the empty spot next to Oliver. For someone like the tech startup CEO, who believed everything in his life needed to have an impeccable narrative, the arrival of that man was an irritating detail, something that didn't fit. Oliver shot a quick, evaluative glance at the stranger, as if trying to determine what he was doing there. Perhaps he expected to see something that justified his presence, a status symbol, a demeanor worthy of the exclusive environment. However, the man remained serene and discreet. That irritated Oliver more than he wanted to admit. "Who travels in a sweatshirt and cap in first class?" he thought to himself, while pretending to adjust his laptop. The cabin, which until then had seemed a stage set to showcase Oliver's grandeur, began to close in around him. The sound of the engines gradually growing was the perfect soundtrack for the scene unfolding. When the flight attendant appeared offering the first drinks, Oliver made his usual choice, which he considered the choice of winners, a glass of French champagne. He accepted the drink with a slight nod and an expression that seemed to say, "Of course it's champagne, isn't it obvious?" The man in seat 2B, however, simply raised his face calmly and replied, "Water, please." This sparked a flicker of irritation in Oliver. He glanced briefly at the passenger and murmured just loud enough to be heard, "Seriously, water? You look like you should be in economy class." The provocation was cast like a fishing hook. He expected some sort of reaction that would confirm his superior position, an embarrassed look, a defensive response, or even a comment in a tone of apology. But the man next to him only smiled slightly, as if the comment were as insignificant as a leaf blown by the wind. There was no retaliation, no sign of discomfort. The smile, however, had something curious about it. It was too serene, almost enigmatic. This controlled silence stirred something strange in Oliver. He was used to being the center of attention, having the last word, and dominating interactions. For him, this was not just an empty seat filled. It was a silent battle that needed to be won. "So, what do you do for a living?" Oliver asked, his tone mixing forced curiosity with condescension. The man turned slightly and replied calmly, "I work in technology." The phrase was so simple and straightforward that Oliver hardly knew how to react. He expected a response that would confirm his assumptions, something that would allow him to feel superior. Perhaps a hesitant reply, a profession that could be belittled, but "I work in technology" seemed like an impenetrable shield, a calculated silence that refused to give up any ground. "Oh, technology?" Oliver continued, trying to regain control. "I bet we have a lot of war stories to share then. I'm the CEO of a software startup." He paused intentionally to let the title shine in the air. "It's incredible how the tech world is full of these overrated figures, don't you think? Like, I don't know, Elon Musk, SpaceX blowing up rockets, Tesla with self-driving cars, and the chaos he caused on Twitter. The biggest modern disaster, if you want to know." This time the man remained calm, listening as if he were watching a monologue. At certain moments he would offer short phrases, almost disarming, like, "You seem really passionate about the topic." That was exactly what unsettled Oliver. The man did not try to compete with him, did not seek to win the conversation, but he also didn't show any signs of submission. The calmness of the stranger was like an inverted mirror, reflecting Oliver's own insecurity, which he attempted to hide beneath layers of arrogance. The truth was that throughout his discourse on the tech industry, Oliver had hoped to find an adversary who would reinforce his status as an expert. Instead, all he found was a confident silence that seemed to laugh at him without making a sound. The flight continued steadily, reaching its cruising altitude, while Oliver's irritation grew in proportion to his neighbor's tranquility. Something about that man seemed familiar, although he couldn't quite identify what. Perhaps it was the smile that was too calm, or the gaze that was too attentive, or simply the way he seemed to occupy that space effortlessly. Oliver didn't know, but he was about to discover that the simple man beside him in a sweatshirt and cap was not just another passenger. He was the very subject of Oliver's criticism, a silent presence who would turn his arrogance into an unforgettable lesson. That Flight 317 to Tokyo, initially a scene of elegant silence and discreetly rehearsed smiles, now carried an invisible but almost palpable tension. Oliver Bennett's monologue about Elon Musk and the supposed failures of his companies had been for him an almost theatrical act. He imagined he had dominated the conversation. After all, that was what he did best. Every word had been carefully chosen, punctuated by strategic pauses, as if his speech were being broadcast live to an invisible audience waiting anxiously to applaud him. But there, in seat 2B, the man in the sweatshirt and cap remained impassive, and that silence was more unsettling than any sharp retort could have been. And then came the moment that unraveled Oliver's carefully constructed narrative. The flight attendant approached the passenger beside him, and with a respectful tone that instantly changed the atmosphere around them, said with almost ceremonial clarity, "Mr. Musk, the captain asked to confirm your connection in Tokyo." It was as if Oliver's world had frozen in time. The name Musk echoed in first class, like muffled thunder, impossible to ignore. Elon Musk, the man he had ridiculed moments earlier, the man whose work he had minimized with such conviction. The impact was immediate. Oliver's mouth dried up, his hands stopped typing on the keyboard, and the sparkle of self-confidence in his eyes vanished like a snuffed flame. The flight attendant continued her work, walking away with ease, as if she hadn't just triggered a silent earthquake. Around them, other passengers who had caught the moment subtly averted their eyes, but the discomfort was palpable. It was as if the name Elon Musk had the power to reorder everything around. Oliver, on the other hand, was paralyzed. He finally saw the man beside him with different eyes. Suddenly, the simple sweatshirt was no longer just a casual choice. It was a demonstration of someone who didn't need to prove anything to anyone. The baseball cap, which had seemed to hide an ordinary face, now appeared almost like a shield of humility. There, sitting less than a meter away, was one of the most influential men on the planet, the founder of Tesla, of SpaceX, and the man who was literally pushing the boundaries of the known world. Oliver felt the crushing weight of his own words crashing back against him like a giant wave. Every sarcastic comment, every critique uttered in a condescending tone, now he realized, had been directed straight at the protagonist of those stories. It was as if he had inadvertently decided to insult a king without knowing that the very monarch was sitting disguised right next to him. First class, once an exclusive environment that Oliver believed he dominated, had become a stage where he was the only clumsy actor. Some passengers had noticed what had happened. Although no one said a word, the atmosphere felt saturated with tension. Subtle movements revealed the discomfort. A man adjusted his glasses and quickly returned to his newspaper. A woman shifted in her armchair, and even the clinking of champagne glasses seemed louder than usual. But the worst was yet to come. Oliver, desperately trying to find an emotional escape route, took one last chance to regain some control. With a voice almost stammering, he turned to Elon Musk and murmured, "So, you're Elon Musk?" The man, who had shown no sign of being affected until then, lifted his gaze from the book with an almost superhuman calmness. His look was steady yet serene, and he replied simply, "That's what they say." This response, so short, so straightforward, had a devastating effect. There was no arrogance, no sarcasm, just a disconcerting lightness that made Oliver want to shrink into his armchair. He felt his ego, which had been inflated and fiery until that moment, deflate in a humiliating manner. Deep down, Oliver knew he had made a mistake. Not only had he spoken too much, but he had also spoken to the wrong person, in the wrong way. As his mind spun in circles, trying to process the situation, he began to notice small details that had gone unnoticed before. The book Elon was holding, whose cover displayed advanced engineering graphs and concepts, the attentive, analytical gaze that seemed to absorb every detail of the environment, the relaxed but firm posture that indicated a man accustomed to facing challenges far more daunting than an uncomfortable flight. On the other hand, Elon Musk's silent reaction did not go unnoticed by the other passengers. Many had already recognized the billionaire, and although they maintained the typical discretion of a first-class environment, the furtive glances and contained smiles revealed that this scene had already become a memorable story to be told after landing. After all, how many people could say they witnessed someone insult Elon Musk to his face and survived the embarrassment? Social media, had it captured that moment, would have exploded with comments and reactions. People would share memes, make jokes, but they would also reflect on the episode. How does someone have the courage to criticize Musk in front of him? Would be one of the most recurring questions, followed by analyses of the lesson embedded in that interaction. And then came the silence, a deafening silence that seemed to last for hours, though it was only a few minutes. While Elon Musk calmly returned to his book, Oliver Bennett sank deeper into his own thoughts. It was a revealing silence that made Oliver realize that on the grand stage of life, he'd been merely a secondary character trying to steal the scene, without success. That flight, which had begun as an opportunity for Oliver to flaunt his importance, had now transformed into a raw and inevitable lesson. True greatness did not need to be proclaimed loudly. It manifested in actions, ideas, and the calm confidence of those genuinely shaping the future. And in that moment, Oliver knew he had been silently overshadowed by someone who didn't even need to try. The silence in the first-class cabin stretched like a dense, heavy, almost physical fog. As the distant sound of engines filled the atmosphere, Oliver Bennett felt the crushing weight of his own words. Each criticism he had hurled, each biting joke about Elon Musk, now seemed like a deafening echo in his mind. The phrases he had spat out with such confidence had been directed, unbeknownst to him, at the man he secretly admired most, and ironically also envied. At that moment, Oliver's position as the CEO of a startup he insisted on calling revolutionary felt ridiculously small compared to the concrete and colossal legacy of Elon Musk. Oliver tried to convince himself that the discomfort would pass, but the human mind, especially one so driven by ego, does not allow such moments to be easily forgotten. He felt exposed, fragile, as if his carefully constructed facade had been ripped away without warning. Overcome by a near childlike urgency to fix the damage, he decided to take a risk. With a voice more restrained and hesitant than he ever thought possible, Oliver turned to Elon once more and murmured, "Look, I didn't mean anything by what I said earlier. You know how it is, right? Sometimes we just ramble." Elon Musk, who had been engrossed in his book, lifted his eyes calmly and looked at him again. There was something in his gaze, firm but without aggression, that dismantled any attempt at justification. Without haste, he responded with a disconcerting simplicity, "I don't take it personally." The phrase, delivered with such lightness, should have been a relief for Oliver, but in reality it acted as yet another precise blow. There was no resentment in Elon's voice, but the absence of emotion felt even more powerful. Oliver realized then that his previous words hadn't even scratched the surface of the man beside him. For someone like Elon Musk, accustomed to being criticized, attacked, and even ridiculed by a portion of the world, Oliver's comments were nothing more than dust in the wind. That realization made him reflect. How many times had he himself reacted poorly to trivial criticisms? How many times had he lost his composure in the face of opinions different from his own? The way Elon handled the attack, with calm, elegance, and unwavering confidence, was a brutal contrast to Oliver's behavior. However, Elon did not stop there. Without raising his voice or altering his tone, he began to offer a perspective Oliver had never considered. "You mentioned Tesla, for instance," he said calmly. Do you know what the real impact of electric cars is? It's not just about selling beautiful, quiet vehicles. It's about reducing global emissions, combating climate change, and perhaps helping to save the planet for future generations. Oliver swallowed hard. He had never thought of Tesla's impact in that way. To him, electric cars were merely another market trend, something that generated exorbitant profits for companies. Elon spoke like someone who saw the big picture, someone whose vision stretched beyond profit margins and extended into the future of the planet. And about SpaceX, Elon continued, adjusting the book in his lap. You mentioned the explosions. Yes, rockets explode, but every failure is a lesson. Every test brings us closer to the goal of making space travel accessible and viable. Have you ever stopped to think about what that means? Oliver simply nodded, as if he were listening to a professor in a classroom. Elon continued, his voice taking on a hint of enthusiasm, something almost imperceptible, but Oliver picked up on it. Imagine a future where we can colonize Mars, where humanity no longer needs to be confined to a single planet. Reducing the costs of sending satellites into space means improving global communication, providing internet access to remote areas, and even saving lives through scientific advancements we can't yet imagine. The passion in Elon's voice was undeniable. It wasn't arrogance or ostentation, it was genuineness. He spoke like a man driven by a greater purpose, something that transcended the pursuit of money or recognition. The most curious part was that throughout their conversation, Elon Musk made no effort to belittle Oliver. He didn't need to. His arguments, built on facts, logic, and an almost utopian vision of the future, spoke for themselves. Oliver felt smaller with each phrase, not because Elon was humiliating him, but because for the first time he was seeing the vastness of what that man had achieved. Finally, Elon addressed the last topic Oliver dared to criticize: Twitter. With a slightly contemplative expression, he said, "Yes, Twitter is chaotic, but chaos is sometimes necessary for progress. Without friction, there's no movement. Without debate, there's no innovation." That phrase echoed in Oliver's mind like a mantra. He had spent his life avoiding chaos, controlling his image, erasing any criticism. But Elon, the man he had so often criticized, embraced chaos, transforming it into opportunity, growth, and real-world impact. Oliver sank deeper into his chair. There was nothing more to say. He felt as if he had been placed before a mirror, forced to see his own smallness. For the first time in a long time, he realized he didn't know as much as he thought he did. And this realization, although painful, was also liberating. Sometimes, the greatest lessons come from the most unexpected places. For Oliver, that conversation with Elon Musk would be a scar, but also an opportunity for growth. A chance to rethink his words, his actions, and most importantly, the kind of impact he wanted to leave on the world. Elon didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need to be cruel. He simply showed, with calm and clarity, what it truly means to be grand. Oliver closed his laptop. For the first time on that flight, he didn't feel like pretending to be busy. He just looked out the window, reflecting on the lesson he had just learned. After a series of serene, yet overwhelmingly logical responses from Elon Musk, the first-class cabin fell into an almost reverent silence. Oliver Bennett was still digesting everything he had heard. Each word from Elon seemed to function like a key, unlocking doors in Oliver's mind and revealing realities he had never considered. Deep down, he knew he was not just facing the CEO of some of the world's largest companies, but a man who truly carried the weight of the future on his shoulders. As Oliver sank into his thoughts, he couldn't help but observe Elon's behavior with new eyes. It was almost comical, if it weren't so impressive, how simple and unassuming Musk appeared in that moment. His relaxed posture contrasted sharply with the gigantic impact of his actions in the world. He wore a worn hoodie and a baseball cap, as if he were just another ordinary traveler, but within that man rested a restless mind, capable of turning dreams into tangible realities. Elon Musk's everyday life, when observed closely, is anything but ordinary. He's known for working between 80 and 100 hours a week, an insane routine even by billionaire standards. He wakes up early, organizes his day with almost military precision, and divides his time among his various companies, each operating in completely different sectors, but interconnected by the thread of innovation. At Tesla, the giant of electric cars, Musk is not just building beautiful, futuristic vehicles, he is redefining what it means to drive. Each Tesla sold represents a small victory in the battle against climate change. Musk sees electric cars as the inevitable future, a necessity to ensure a more sustainable world for future generations. "We are not selling cars, we're selling a vision of a cleaner planet," he once said in an interview. Under his leadership, Tesla became the first American automaker to achieve a market valuation exceeding $1 trillion, something many deemed impossible. However, the true heart of Elon Musk beats strongest at SpaceX, a company that represents the pinnacle of his bold vision. Oliver began to recall stories about SpaceX, the public explosions of the Falcon 1 rockets, the widespread disbelief of the aerospace industry, and the sarcasm from experts who mocked the idea of a private company revolutionizing space exploration. Yet, as Musk had said, every explosion was a lesson. Every piece of destroyed metal was a learning opportunity. Today, SpaceX not only sends reusable rockets into space, but also holds contracts with NASA and is a key player in humanity's interplanetary future. Unlike many, Elon does not see Mars as a distant fantasy. For him, colonizing Mars is a matter of human survival. If a catastrophic event occurs on Earth, a nuclear war, an asteroid impact, or irreversible climate change, we need a plan B, he once stated with the same seriousness with which others discuss everyday problems. When he talks about making Mars habitable, about creating self-sustaining cities on a hostile planet, there is no hesitation. It's as if he has already envisioned the colonies, the first inhabitants, and humanity's flag planted on the red soil. As Oliver observed Musk there, sitting so calmly beside him, he began to understand something essential. There was no room for limits in that man's mind. Where others saw insurmountable barriers, Elon saw challenges. Where others saw risk, he saw opportunity. Even his other ventures like Starlink and Neuralink carry undeniable weight. With Starlink, Musk aims to bring high-speed internet to the most remote corners of the planet, connecting villages, schools, and hospitals in areas where communication is a luxury. With Neuralink, he dares to go beyond what any mind can conceive, merging the human brain with technology. Musk believes that to keep pace with artificial intelligence, we need to enhance our biological mind's capabilities. His ideas, though bold, carry a purpose: to tackle problems that many do not even dare to confront. But not everything in Elon Musk's life is monumental achievements and futuristic goals. His journey is also marked by sacrifices. Musk has admitted that his grueling work routine has distanced him from important family moments, and that the weight of carrying so many responsibilities is often lonely. During an interview, he confessed, "The truth is, being an entrepreneur is not glamorous. It's pain, it's hardship, it's doubt, it's waking up in the middle of the night worried about what could go wrong." For Oliver, this was another silent epiphany. He had always believed that success was measured by external shine, by accumulated wealth, first-class seats, and social media followers. But Musk was living proof that genuine success demands a high price: vision, courage, and an unusual willingness to face the harshest criticisms. As Elon continued to flip through his book, oblivious to the turmoil he was causing in Oliver's mind, the startup CEO found himself compelled to reflect on his own life. How many times had he given up on a project just because it seemed too difficult? How many times had he prioritized what was easy, safe, and comfortable instead of risking something that could truly make a difference? The answer was painful, yet undeniable. Many. Elon Musk was not just the richest man in the world. He was someone who had chosen the hardest possible path, not out of vanity, but because he believed that the future of humanity depended on it. And there, seated just a few centimeters away, Oliver Bennett realized how limited his own worldview had been. Sometimes, the greatest lessons do not come from books or inspiring lectures. They emerge in unexpected moments, like a first-class flight, where you happen to sit next to someone who is literally shaping the destiny of humanity. For Oliver, that flight was becoming a turning point, a wake-up call. He had not only met Elon Musk, he had been confronted with true greatness, and for the first time in a long time, he felt humbled by it. That airplane journey, which began as a simple transcontinental flight, had turned into a transformative experience for Oliver Bennett. Sitting next to Elon Musk, he was no longer just in the presence of an ordinary man, but of a mind that seemed always a step, or perhaps a decade, ahead of the rest of the world. As he watched Musk calmly leafing through his book, Oliver couldn't help but ponder a question that echoed in his mind. What does the future hold for someone like him? And consequently, what does the future hold for all of us? Elon Musk is not driven solely by the ambition to create profitable companies or achieve temporary goals. He is propelled by something much greater, the idea of a more advanced, sustainable, and above all, resilient future. Each of his projects, Tesla, SpaceX, Starlink, Neuralink, and even Twitter, is not an isolated piece, but part of a grand puzzle that only he seems to see clearly. At Tesla, the future is already happening. While Oliver had always viewed electric cars as a status symbol, Musk sees Tesla as an essential piece for a more sustainable planet. His goal goes beyond selling beautiful modern cars. He wants to transform the entire automotive industry. In his words, it's not enough to just make electric vehicles. We need to make this the norm, not the exception. Tesla invests heavily in developing increasingly powerful and durable batteries, exploring innovative materials that allow for cost reduction and global expansion. But Musk doesn't want to stop at cars. He is already talking about cities of the future powered by solar energy and fueled by large-scale energy storage solutions like the Powerwall and Megapack batteries. Oliver remembered reading about a small town in Australia that, thanks to Tesla technology, managed to solve chronic energy supply problems with a battery park that replaced fossil fuels. That was not just a car, it was a silent energy revolution. However, Musk's grander vision seemed to rest in the stars, quite literally. SpaceX, which started as an almost megalomaniacal dream of reducing the cost of space travel, is now a reality. The Starship program, with its reusable rockets and increasingly ambitious tests, is not just about space exploration. It's about transforming humanity into an interplanetary species. For Musk, Mars is not just a distant and unreachable destination. It is the key to our species' survival. Elon speaks about the red planet with an unnerving naturalness. One day we will have colonies on Mars. It will be difficult at first, of course, but someone needs to take the first step. He believes that while most people worry only about the short term, the true challenge is preparing humanity to face existential risks that could destroy Earth, such as an asteroid impact, extreme climate change, or even nuclear wars. And even if the idea of colonizing Mars seems like something out of a sci-fi movie to many, SpaceX has already proven capable of overcoming obstacles that once seemed insurmountable. Oliver, still awestruck by the grandeur of that vision, recalled the frequent criticisms Elon faced regarding his space projects. Many accused him of wasting absurd resources on space, while problems persist on Earth. But Musk's response has always been clear. Solving problems here and exploring space are not conflicting goals. We can and must do both. SpaceX not only creates new possibilities for human exploration, but also revolutionizes Earth's own infrastructure with the Starlink project. Starlink may be the most tangible example of Musk's futuristic vision. With thousands of satellites already in low orbit, the goal is to provide high-speed internet to all regions of the planet, especially to remote areas where connectivity is virtually non-existent. Think of isolated schools in the heart of Africa, villages in mountainous regions of Nepal, or emergency hospitals in disaster-stricken locations. Starlink is not just an internet service, it is a bridge that connects the world, offering opportunities for education, health, and economic growth to those who need it most. As Oliver pondered this, his mind drifted back to Neuralink, Musk's most audacious project of all. Elon aims to develop a brain-computer interface capable of merging human potential with technology. As frightening as it may sound, Musk believes that in a world dominated by artificial intelligence, we need to keep pace with this advancement to avoid becoming obsolete. The Neuralink device could, in the future, treat serious neurological diseases such as paralysis, epilepsy, and Alzheimer's. Musk has stated in one of his interviews that Neuralink is not about replacing humans. It's about enhancing our ability to think, learn, and solve problems. Elon Musk's vision for the future is not just revolutionary, it is existential. He does not speak in terms of small victories or temporary gains, but of paradigm shifts, those that transform the course of human history. In his plans, Oliver saw something he had never seen before: true purpose. Everything had a reason, a profound meaning that connected the pieces of what had once seemed a chaotic jumble of disconnected ideas. Finally, Oliver began to understand. Elon Musk's future was not about him, his fortune, or his personal legacy. It was about something much larger: survival, progress, and awakening the highest form of human potential. As the plane headed toward Tokyo, Oliver cast a furtive glance at Elon. Here was a man who bore the weight of a future he seemed determined to build, regardless of critics or skepticism. And Oliver realized that the world needed more people like him, people willing to dream big, to face the impossible, and to persist even when everything seemed against them. It was impossible not to wonder, if Elon Musk can look to space and see a home, what's stopping me from looking around and seeing a greater purpose for my own life? Oliver didn't have an answer, but for the first time, he was willing to seek one. The silence in first class was almost poetic. That same environment, which had once been the stage for Oliver Bennett's inflated words and arrogance, now felt like another world. Elon Musk, with his almost supernatural calm, not only remained the most important person in that cabin, but also embodied a man whose impact transcended visible limits. Oliver began to perceive something that had previously felt too abstract to become real: the impact of a single individual on the course of human history. The impact of Elon Musk on the world cannot be measured merely by the billions of dollars he accumulates or the companies he leads. His true legacy lies in transforming paradigms, propelling global progress, and challenging the limits that others barely dare to question. Elon does not merely observe the future, he builds it. For decades, the automotive industry has been trapped in an outdated model based on fossil fuels and driven by immediate profit, ignoring the devastating effects on the environment. Under Musk's leadership, Tesla shattered this barrier with a disruptive and bold vision to make electric cars not just a reality, but a global desire. It's no surprise that the Tesla Model S, voted the safest and most efficient car in the world, redefined what an electric vehicle can be. But Tesla's impact goes beyond the roads. With its cutting-edge batteries and storage solutions, Musk is paving the way for a more sustainable planet, where renewable energy will not just be an alternative, but the norm. The development of batteries like the Powerwall and Megapack offers a new solution for large-scale solar and wind energy storage, allowing small communities and even entire cities to live with clean electricity. In Puerto Rico, for example, after natural disasters, Tesla helped restore power to hospitals and schools in record time. Elon Musk's impact also extends to space. For decades, the space race has been the exclusive domain of governments and billion-dollar budgets, where any idea of commercial travel or interplanetary colonization was treated as a distant fantasy. With SpaceX, Musk turned the game around. He managed not only to build reusable rockets, something many deemed impossible, but also made space travel more accessible and frequent. The mission of SpaceX goes far beyond launching satellites or sending cargo into space. Musk dreams of Mars, not as a poetic metaphor. For him, colonizing the red planet is an existential obligation for humanity. Earth is a cradle, but we cannot stay in the cradle forever, he once said. Under his vision, Mars is not just a symbol of what we can achieve, it is a promise of survival. survival, a chance to ensure our species continues to exist, even in the face of future uncertainties. Yet, the most visible impact of SpaceX can already be felt here on Earth through the Starlink project. With thousands of satellites orbiting the planet, Musk's proposed high-speed internet network is breaking down geographic and social barriers. Even the most remote regions, isolated villages, communities in areas devastated by wars or disasters, are beginning to gain access to the internet. This means education for children who could never attend school, medical connections for those who were previously forgotten, and economic opportunities for populations that never imagined competing on the global stage. But Musk's impact is not only tangible, it is also philosophical. Elon constantly questions the limits of what is possible. He does not accept traditional excuses, those phrases we hear so often, "That can't be done, it's too expensive, it's not worth the risk." He responds to these barriers with actions that challenge reality itself. When criticized, he simply dedicates himself more, fails, learns, and keeps trying until his visions become reality. Elon has also made his mark in the field of neuroscience with Neuralink, a company that seems straight out of a science fiction movie. Its goal, to connect the human brain to computers through advanced biological interfaces. In an era where artificial intelligence is advancing rapidly, Musk believes we need to evolve alongside technology, enhancing our mental capacity and seeking solutions to complex medical problems. If successful, Neuralink could restore mobility to paralyzed individuals, cure neurological diseases, and expand the limits of the human mind. As Oliver reflected on all of this, he realized something even deeper. Elon Musk's impact is not only practical or technological, it is inspirational. His journey serves as a beacon for millions of entrepreneurs, scientists, and dreamers around the world. Musk shows us that no problem is too big to solve, that failure is part of the journey, and that true success comes to those who have the courage to believe in the impossible. Oliver also thought about the price Musk paid for bearing such heavy responsibilities. Constant criticism, monumental pressure, and almost unrealistic expectations were a daily reality for him. Yet there he was, sitting next to Oliver, calm and serene, as if he were immune to the chaos that often plagued his brilliant mind. That demeanor was, in itself, a powerful lesson. Greatness does not need to be loud. It speaks for itself. And perhaps that was Musk's greatest impact on the world, the ability to inspire, to make people believe that there is still room to dream, and that the future, no matter how uncertain, can be shaped by the hands of those who dare to try. For Oliver, the lesson was clear. It's not just about accumulating wealth or recognition. It's about leaving a legacy, something that transcends the individual and transforms the world in an irreversible way. For the first time, Oliver felt small, not in a negative sense, but as someone who finally recognized the vastness of the universe and its limitless potential. He looked out the airplane window, contemplating the dark sky sprinkled with stars, and thought about how the man next to him was transforming the very notion of what is possible. Deep down, everyone carries the capacity to impact the world, but few truly dedicate themselves to doing so. Elon Musk was one of those few, and Oliver, with humility, began to understand that there was still time for him to become one as well. The airplane was already heading toward its destination, cutting through the dark sky over the Pacific, but for Oliver Bennett, time seemed to have stopped. The conversation, or rather the silent lesson with Elon Musk, had left deeper marks than he had imagined. While Elon calmly read his book, immersed in a tranquility that seemed unattainable, Oliver felt the weight of his own attitudes coming back to him like a mirror. For the first time in a long time, he did not see himself as the center of the universe. Humility. The word hammered in his mind since the moment Elon had responded with such serenity to his uninformed attacks and criticisms. How Musk had conducted himself throughout the interaction not only deflated his inflated ego, but also showed him just how much he, Oliver, had to learn about true greatness. Elon Musk's behavior on that flight was not merely polite, there was something profoundly symbolic about it. While Oliver sought to be the most noticed, the most heard, and the most important, Elon seemed indifferent to any of those labels. He did not need validation. His confidence came from a place Oliver could hardly comprehend, from purpose, from the unwavering certainty that he was doing something that truly mattered. This was the first major lesson Oliver began to absorb. Humility is not about diminishing oneself, but about recognizing that the world is bigger than you and that there will always be something more to learn, something greater to achieve. Greatness, he realized, does not need to be loudly proclaimed. It manifests in actions, in results, and most importantly, in the way we treat those around us, whether they are CEOs or flight attendants. Elon Musk could have reacted in various ways to Oliver's provocations and insults. He could have countered, humiliated him, or made it clear who he was from the start. Anyone else in his position might have done just that, driven by the need to defend themselves or to show superiority. But Elon, with an almost supernatural calm, chose a different path. He listened, reflected, and at the right moment used his words as a teaching tool. Each phrase, each calculated silence was an invitation for Oliver to look within himself and see what needed to change. This type of posture, Oliver realized, was what set true leaders apart from those who merely wanted to appear important. Great leaders do not humiliate others. They elevate them, even when the lesson comes disguised as an inevitable embarrassment. And on that flight, Elon Musk's greatness was measured not by what he said, but by what he chose not to say. As Oliver's mind revisited those moments, he also began to remember other figures who had changed the world. People like Mahatma Gandhi, who preached strength through non-violence, or Nelson Mandela, who, even after decades in prison, chose forgiveness and reconciliation over revenge. Musk, however different his approach might be, shared that same characteristic, the ability to remain calm under pressure and to use his influence for something that transcended ego. Oliver reflected on how Elon Musk had faced challenges far greater than the words of an arrogant man on a first-class flight. He had been ridiculed when founding SpaceX, called a lunatic for investing millions in rockets that exploded one after another. Tesla, in its early days, almost closed its doors several times, while critics predicted its imminent failure. Twitter, since he acquired it, became a constant target of skeptical analysis and jokes. Yet, Elon continued moving forward, like a rocket gaining momentum against the pull of gravity. How many times, Oliver wondered, had he given up when faced with criticism or a small failure? How many times had he allowed himself to be consumed by the fear of not appearing good enough or the constant need for admiration? The truth was hard to face, but there, next to Elon Musk, he could no longer ignore it. He had spent more energy trying to seem important than actually seeking to become someone of value. With that thought echoing in his mind, Oliver felt an uncontrollable urge to speak. Perhaps it was the weight of the moment, or perhaps for the first time in years, he genuinely felt the need to connect with someone. He turned slightly to Elon and, in a low, almost timid voice, said, "Mr. Musk, I just wanted to apologize. I think it's easy to criticize from the outside, but I can't imagine the weight of what you do." Elon looked up from his book once again. There was something almost paternal in his gaze, not judgment, but a careful analysis, as if he were trying to decide whether Oliver's words were sincere. Finally, he smiled slightly and replied, "The apology is accepted. Progress will always face resistance, but the secret is not to give up." That simple phrase carried an extraordinary weight. Elon didn't need to say anything more. His words were a perfect synthesis of everything he believed. The greatest changes come with the greatest challenges, and it's up to each of us to decide whether we want to retreat or move forward. Oliver nodded, feeling a burden lift from his shoulders. He looked out the airplane window, where the sky was beginning to lighten with the sunrise. For the first time in a long while, he no longer felt the need to prove anything to anyone. He wanted just one thing, to do something that truly mattered. What had started as a clash of egos ended as a lesson that Oliver would carry for the rest of his life. He realized that humility wasn't about belittling oneself, but rather about having the wisdom to recognize one's limitations and being willing to learn. He understood that empty criticisms, impulsive words, and the desire for superiority would take him nowhere. The plane finally landed in Tokyo, and the cabin began to stir as passengers prepared to disembark. Elon Musk stood up, grabbed his simple backpack, and walked calmly down the aisle, greeting the flight attendant with a small wave. Oliver remained seated for a moment, watching him disappear among the other passengers. That image would forever be etched in his mind. The man who dared to challenge the impossible, who bore the weight of the future with enviable calmness, and who, at the same time, didn't need acknowledgement to know who he was. Oliver took a deep breath, stood up, and followed his path. He knew he wouldn't leave that flight as the same man who had boarded. For the first time, he was ready to set his ego aside and seek something greater, a real purpose. And all of this happened because, that morning, he had the privilege of learning, in the most unexpected way, the most valuable of lessons, the strength of humility.